Welcome to Industry Champions. I'm your host, Chris Budihas, and joining from St. Charles over near St. Louis, because we had that conversation, is Alicia Trautwein, and she's with the Mom Kind. Alicia, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
It's wonderful. Thanks for taking time. So the Mom Kind, what is this organization?
Yeah, so the Mom Kind is all about providing autism support to families, helping them get in contact with their local resources, helping them with IEP assistance, and just navigating the systems that we live within.
Okay, that's great. And how long have you been doing this?
So we were talking about earlier, almost a decade now.
Yeah.
Most of that started around 2017, and has been slowly moving from there.
That's great. What was your inspiration for the Mom Kind?
Yeah, so for us, it came down to we had a total of 3 autism diagnoses within just about a year's time period. One very early diagnosis and then 2 later diagnoses with our children's. And at the time, there really wasn't much online about navigating that as a parent, especially with multiple children. And so you'd always hear perspective like, either from a doctor or a parent who maybe had one autistic child. Not many were online saying, hey, this is what's going on with, if you're trying to juggle 3 kids with 3 very different needs. And so started sharing our journey, and then it just kind of evolved from there into share what I learned with others, and then helping others kind of navigate those same systems.
Yeah. And how can you speak to this? How prevalent is autism these days?
So right now the numbers are, it's a little bit variant on there, but basically about 1 in 33 here in America. And a lot of that has to do with just better awareness.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, there was a misconception that it was only little boys that got, that had autism. And now we have a better understanding that it doesn't matter the gender, ethnicity, anything like that. And so there's much more awareness. And then we're seeing a lot more adult diagnosis as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I tell folks, historically, we just know things a little bit more than we know previously. This is not a new phenomenon in many cases, though maybe the numbers are greater for different environmental reasons that are unknown or known at this time. But, we're actually studying this, I was talking about earlier. I think we study, autism and other things a little bit greater than we have. And then the sheer mass of advancements in medical care can help folks. But I can imagine, I'm a parent, God bless them, they're all adults and they're paying their own bills, but all 3 of my kids out of the house, it's difficult having kids, but if you have a child who's got autism, could be various levels on the spectrum, that could be pretty daunting as a parent. But if you got more than one, man, I can imagine the difficulty is pretty substantial.
But yeah, I mean, it is. And, you want to do what's best for each of your children. And especially, like I said, if you have different children, different ages and stages of their life, now we're at a point where 3 of my kids are adults, one's still, under that 18 age, but their needs are differing, from each other. And then just based off their ages, because what they needed at 6, 7 years old is not the same as they're transitioning from 18, 19 into adulthood.
Okay. And with the Mom Kind, can you speak a little bit more to, what you guys do and how do you do it? And then, obviously I encourage folks, if you have a child with autism or not, to actually look at your website to get a little more educated because, obviously it takes a community to raise a community so we can all learn from you. So can you talk to us more about the Mom Kind?
Yeah, so a major part of it is just providing information and connecting parents with, that conversation of, one, you're not alone. This is part of a journey that a lot of us have been taking for a while. And so a lot of the basics of the Mom Kind started out solely as, here's some information, here's a specific topic a parent asked about, and whether it's me writing on it or some other either parent or autistic adult or doctor even. We have a lot of guest authors on there as well that come along and just share the information. And then from there, we do a lot of advocacy within the community, whether that be social media, in person. And then I do a lot of IEP assistance. So talking with parents on what resources they need to do to get the supports at school, because a lot of things that happen in life are happening at school, but parents don't really know what supports to even ask for or how to do that from the start.
That's a great point because you could live, I don't know, in the city or in the country and the various levels of support may be an unknown, right? But regardless of where you live, there's an expectation either from the county, the state, or even the federal level that there's a level of support that your child is supposed to receive by law or policy. And I can imagine you just not understanding that, you can disadvantage your child and not allow them the services they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen cases where there are schools that have been phenomenal and have offered those resources to parents who didn't know and said, "Hey, your child needs support. This is what we're going to do." But in most cases, parents are struggling. They're contacting teachers or contacting principals, but they have no clue to even just say, "Hey, I want an evaluation for IEP, which is Individual Education Plan, which is a federally protected right for your children to have equal education." And parents don't even know to ask for that information. I didn't, when we started our journey, and that was a whole process for me. So after learning that, I was like, oh, I need to start sharing this, because if I didn't know that, I'm sure there's so many other people that don't. And that's what we figured out very quickly,
Yeah.
that people just don't even know what to ask for, let alone to even start out with a written piece of documents to saying, I want this evaluation.
Well, that's good. No, thanks for that. As they said when I was growing up on Saturday morning cartoons, knowledge is power. So getting the
Yes.
knowledge is great. And then I find with the internet, is sometimes you can have too much information and not the right information. So you want a valuable source that you're going to, because we're talking about your child. That's one of your most precious things in your life. You want to make sure you're actually doing the right thing by them. So with the mom kind, how do folks find more about about the mom kind and more about you?
Yeah, so like I said, coming to the website first and foremost, that's like the easiest one. If that's going to be where a lot of the blogs are, a lot of direct connections are. But then also on social media, I pivoted, back during COVID, I pivoted to doing social media to kind of get more outreach out there. So I share topics pretty much on every platform.
Yeah.
And when parents ask direct questions, if I can, I make sure to answer that. And so that's where a lot of my content comes from, is directly from somebody saying, hey, what's this?
That's great. Well, hey, Alicia, number one, thanks for coming on Industry Champions and telling your story and talking to us more about the mom kind and the current state of autism. And we look forward. I'd love to have you back on in about 6 months from now and tell you how, tell us where you're at, how it's going, and then, what does the future look like? Because obviously it's unknown, but you guys are advancing the conversation, and that conversation will help with advocacy for our children at the local, state, and the federal level, because the parents aren't speaking up or understanding, then we can't get our government behind to help take care of them. And then also someone's just, how do I do what I do as a parent, as a new parent? That can be, it's scary, right? You got to have a driver's license to drive a car, but you don't have to have a license to have a kid.
No, and they do not come with a manual either, unfortunately.
No, and they won't take them back.
Well,
we tried. I'm sorry. Well, Alicia, thanks again, and I appreciate you coming on.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hey, folks, let's take a look at the mom kind. Also, connect with Alicia and myself on LinkedIn. Love to have a conversation. We'll see you our next segment. Live with Gratitude.